Okay, so today we are diving into some pretty intense material with this one.
Huh?
The 48 Laws of Power.
Hmm.
This book, um, it gets straight to the point, let's just say that.
Yeah, it does.
It's all about strategy and deception and really those like unspoken rules that determine who gets ahead
Right.
and, who gets left behind in the pursuit of power.
It's a look at the sort of timeless truths of influence and power dynamics.
Yeah, and some of them are definitely a little hard to swallow.
Absolutely.
Like, I mean, one of the laws is literally crush your enemy.
Yeah.
Totally.
You know?
So we're not dealing with like subtle suggestions here.
No.
This is like hardcore power dynamics, but
That's why we're here,
that's why we're here.
to break it down.
Yeah, to unpack this controversial stuff and see if we can find those valuable pieces of knowledge
Exactly.
that we can actually use in our own lives. And I think that's really important to emphasize.
Absolutely.
We're not trying to turn into like Machiavellian masterminds here,
No.
running around playing mind games, but it's more about awareness.
It's about awareness. It's about self-protection. It's about, just understanding the game.
Yeah, exactly. Think of it like gaining a tactical advantage just in understanding how power dynamics work around you
Exactly.
so you can navigate those situations more effectively.
Yeah.
So first up, let's talk about a theme that I found really interesting, and that's the power of perception.
Uh,
Law 34, act like a king to be treated. Like
Yeah.
one that's a really good example.
right.
And it essentially says that how you present yourself to the world has a huge impact on how people perceive you and how they treat you.
It's all about perception.
Exactly.
And they actually illustrate this with the story of King Louis Philippe.
Okay.
And he, despite being king, he really downplayed his royal status.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, he would walk around in regular clothes, almost trying to be like the everyman.
It's almost like he was trying too hard to be relatable in a way.
Exactly. And I think, according to the book, it really backfired.
Okay, right.
Yeah, because instead of coming across as approachable, he just seemed insecure, like a poser.
Interesting.
And it really undermined his authority and eventually contributed to his downfall.
That's so interesting because it makes you think about today,
Yeah.
especially in the modern workplace.
Yeah.
How do you project authority in a way that feels genuine?
It's a tough one.
It is a tough one because we value authenticity so much these days.
Right.
So how do you walk that line between being relatable and also commanding respect for the position that you hold?
Yeah. And you know what it speaks to is the importance of consistency.
Okay.
Because if your image and your actions don't align, people see right through it.
Yeah, they can spot that a mile away.
Exactly. And speaking of not aligning, the book mentions that Louis Philippe loved money.
Oh, is that right?
He really loved money. He was amassing a fortune, which seems a tad at odds with the whole, man of the people image.
A bit of a contradiction there.
It is a fascinating contradiction, and it really shows how those mismatched actions and that image can really erode trust.
And that's so important, especially these days, when everyone has this carefully curated online persona.
Totally.
It's like, are you practicing what you preach?
Right?
Because people can sniff out a phony a mile away.
100%.
So lesson 1 from the 48 Laws of Power. I
Yeah.
think perception is powerful, but it's like a double-edged sword.
Totally.
You got to wield it carefully.
Mm-hmm.
Now, how about we dive into something that's a little bit counterintuitive?
Okay, I'm intrigued.
Let's talk about strategic surrender.
Okay.
So we've seen how powerful even just seeming weaker can be. But what about when people use these power plays
Yeah.
for like less noble purposes?
Yeah. Taking it to a whole other level.
Taking it to the dark side.
Right.
And that leads us to Law 33. Discover each man's thumbscrew,
Okay.
which is really all about exploiting weaknesses.
Yeah, and this is where it gets a little uncomfortable.
It gets a little uncomfortable.
Like a little less savory, I would say.
Yeah, a little bit less savory, for sure.
Yeah.
The book uses the example of Count Lustig. Have you heard of him?
I have. He's quite a character.
Oh, he is quite the character.
Yeah.
He was a con artist, infamous for his ability to pinpoint and then leverage people's vulnerabilities.
He was like a master manipulator.
And we're not talking about small-time scams here.
Right.
This is the guy who
Yeah.
sold the Eiffel Tower not once, but twice.
I know, it's incredible.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
And it just goes to show the power of understanding what makes people tick.
Totally. And Lustig's success really just lay in understanding that everyone has those pressure points, those insecurities, those aspirations, those fears.
Yeah.
And once you know what those are, you can tailor your approach to exploit them.
Okay, that is both fascinating and wildly unsettling.
Right, it's a little bit of both.
It's like manipulation 101, but like in a really intense way.
Yeah. Knowledge is power, but it can be used for good or for evil.
That's right. And that's what makes this so tricky.
Yeah.
Because if there are people like Count Lustig out there, how do we protect ourselves?
It's the big question.
Like, what are the warning signs that someone might be trying to, like, play us?
Right, and that's where the real power of this knowledge lies, I think.
Okay.
It's in arming yourself.
Okay.
It's about recognizing patterns.
Mm.
For example, does someone constantly shower you with praise,
Okay.
only to later ask for a huge favor?
Oh, yeah.
Or do they make you doubt yourself constantly, making their opinions seem like the only one that matters?
Yeah, yeah.
These are just subtle things, but they can be red flags
Red flag.
that someone's trying to use you.
So it's about awareness.
Exactly.
It's like knowing the moves in a chess game, even if you're not going to use them in that way.
Yeah, you don't have to play dirty to understand how the game is played.
Exactly. Once you're attuned to those tactics, you're less likely to fall prey to them. You can start to see,
The
like,
strings.
the strings being pulled.
Yeah,
Okay, so we've got to be vigilant. Watch out for those red flags.
absolutely.
Now, switching gears a bit, let's talk about a dynamic that I think we see play out in so many areas of life, and that's the danger of outshining the master.
Interesting.
Law 41, avoid stepping into a great man's shoes.
Okay.
It's all about, the pitfalls of following in legendary footsteps.
It can be a recipe for disaster sometimes.
It really can. And the book uses the example of Louis XIV,
Oh, wow.
the Sun King.
The Sun King.
Talk about a tough act to follow.
Yeah, he cast quite a long shadow, didn't he?
He really did.
Mhm.
Like, how do you even begin to live up to that?
Exactly, and that's the point they're making.
Okay.
It's almost impossible, and it highlights a really crucial point.
Yeah.
When you step into a role that was previously occupied by someone so successful, managing those expectations is key.
Oh, that's a good point.
Because people are always going to be comparing you.
Right. They have those expectations already set.
Exactly. So it's not about trying to erase their legacy. It's about finding a way to make your own mark.
To carve your own path.
Exactly. Because trying to directly compete with that legacy will only highlight your shortcomings.
Yeah. You're setting yourself up for failure,
Eh.
almost.
Right. Focus on what you bring to the table.
Yeah. What's your unique strength?
Your unique strengths, exactly. And the book mentions Alexander the Great
Okay.
when he encountered the Gordian knot.
Oh, yeah. That was a famously complex knot no one could untie.
Exactly right. And he didn't waste time trying to untangle it like everyone
He
else.
just sliced right through it.
Exactly. He just took his sword and he sliced it in half.
What a power move.
Talk about making a statement, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
He completely redefined the challenge. And I think that's such a powerful metaphor for how we can achieve success.
Okay.
It's not about trying to outdo someone on their terms, find a new way to shine.
I love the don't outshine the master, find a new way to shine.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've talked about perception. We've talked about strategic surrender. We even touched on the dark side a little bit with exploiting weaknesses.
It's all connected.
It is all connected.
Right. Yeah.
But let's wrap up with a concept that's relevant, I think, to just about every area of life.
Okay.
Creates dependence. Law 11, keep people dependent on you. It's all about making yourself indispensable.
Becoming the go-to person.
Yeah, you become so essential that people feel lost without you.
Right. And the book uses the example of Bismarck with the Prussian kings.
Oh, yeah. What did he do?
So Bismarck, he was a brilliant strategist, but he didn't try to control the kings directly.
Okay.
He made himself so valuable, so indispensable, that they felt like they needed him.
It's almost like that saying, right? Be so good they can't ignore you.
Exactly, but taken to a whole other level.
To the next level.
Yeah, it's really about cultivating a unique skill set or a depth of knowledge that makes you irreplaceable.
So you're not just another face in the crowd. You're the person to go to.
You're the go-to person, exactly.
And the book actually tells this great story about Michelangelo
Oh, yeah.
and Pope Julius II.
Tale as old as time.
I know, right?
Yeah.
Even the Pope himself had to come begging to Michelangelo when he walked away from a project.
The power of being irreplaceable.
It's really incredible.
Isn't it?
So it's not about being manipulative or cunning, really.
No.
It's about being so good at what you do that people depend on you.
Yeah, you become an asset.
Yeah, and that's a much better position to be in, I think.
100%.
This whole deep dive into the 48 Laws of Power has been a wild ride.
It's pretty intense stuff.
It's a lot to unpack, but it's so fascinating. And I think, even if we don't agree with all of it,
Right.
it's important to be aware of these dynamics
Absolutely.
because they're at play whether we realize it or not.
They are everywhere you look.
Exactly. Everywhere you look. So as you go about your life, you know, think about those subtle forces at play.
The unspoken
The
rules.
unspoken rules of the game. What kind of player do you want to be?
That's a great question.
And how can you use this knowledge to achieve your goals
Right.
while staying true to your own moral compass?
Yeah, that's the big question, isn't it?
That is the big question.
How do we reconcile this with our own ethics?
Exactly, something to ponder.